Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of The Daily here with Josh Weisenhunt, the MLS Insider. I'm Nick Fershaw, and we're going to start with some preseason action out in Arizona. The big headline from Wednesday's games at the Desert Diamond Cup involving Ozzie Alonso, the Seattle Sounders best 11 midfielder, and a rough tackle on the New England Revolution's Chris Tierney. This one resulted in Tierney going off in crutches. Jay Heaps is not happy.
No, he's not happy at all, because you think it's even though it's a competitive tournament now, that we're not playing friendlies anymore, you still, obviously from Jay Heaps' perspective, you don't ever want to see a tackle like that really on one of your main guys. That's what Chris Tierney has become for the Revolution. He was near the top of the team charts in assists last year. But at the same time, people are shocked about this, but I really think that a guy like Ozzie Alonso is wired to go in hard to really every challenge. It doesn't really matter the setting, but obviously it adds a little bit of intrigue for when these teams are going to meet later on this season. Well,
that was one of the biggest headlines, but we will send it out to our very own Greg Lalas and Jonathan Yardley with more from the Desert Diamond Cup. Take it away, guys.
Thanks, guys. Here in Tucson at the opening day of the Desert Diamond Cup. First game, a 2-0 win for Seattle over New England. What'd you take away?
Well, I think it was a pretty fiery affair. There were 2 red cards at the end and a couple of, let's say, forced substitutions in order to calm everyone down for Ozzie Alonso and Clyde Sims. It was a good performance by Seattle, though, overall. I think that their attack looked pretty dangerous. Eddie Johnson with what was the goal of the night and might end up being the goal of the tournament. And so I think they'll be happy with what they saw. I think that New England starting to figure out how that midfield's going to work a little bit more with some new guys. Cisse was in there. In the back, Gonçalves was in there. Are those guys going to really fit?
In the second game, Real Salt Lake jumped out to an early 2-0 lead. New York fought back for a 2-2 tie behind a second-half goal from Michael Bustamante. Interesting game.
Oh, a really interesting game, John, because in the beginning it was all the sort of B-teamers for Salt Lake that came out firing. Joao Plata looked very good. Lots of energy, good skill. Got 1 goal himself and then pretty much set up the second goal with a shot that was deflected and then put in on a rebound. But New York came right back, and they showed that they have the ability to hold possession. Juninho wasn't that too much of a factor, but he kind of ran that midfield with McCarty in there holding possession. That was the important part. And in the second part, Michael Bustamante, I think, did a very good job in the middle of the midfield, even against the starters for Salt Lake when they came on.
All right. Second day of coverage coming up on Saturday. You can catch both games right here on MLSsoccer.com.
Moving down to Florida side of the Disney Pro Soccer Classic, which resumed on Wednesday, and there are 2 teams left that are unbeaten in this tournament thanks to wins on Wednesday. The Montreal Impact and the Columbus Crew both got some wins. And then in the all-MLS one, really the highlight of the day, DC United and Sporting Kansas City, and Sporting Kansas City get the win.
Yeah, it was a good match. 2 really good goals from Bobby Convey and Suni Sada. I think a lot of people were nervous about Suni. Obviously, he's a guy who got hurt down in Tucson. There was an injury scare with him with his tailbone, and he's really going to be relied on for some of that forward depth this year with Kamara gone. And so it's a great sign for him to get back amongst the goals, because he's a talented player from that perspective. I think when you look at the other 2 games, I really like what is going on in Montreal and kind of what they're doing with their side. There's a great article on the site right now sort of about their flexibility in attack with the way that they can interchange. And I don't know if that's something that we saw all the time with Jesse Marsch last year. So it's exciting they have the pieces in place and everyone's back. So, I mean, that's what's good to see. And then as far as Columbus go, I mean, it was really their first choice lineup against a lot of Philadelphia reserves and draft picks. So not too many surprises on that end.
Marco Di Vaio with 2 goals for the Montreal Impact on Wednesday. He's got 3 in 2 games down there in Disney. So keep an eye on him. When play resumes on Saturday, the Montreal Impact will take on DC United. We had 2 guys from both of those teams on the latest edition of Extra Time Radio. That comes out on Thursday. Chris Pontius from DC United and Patrice Bernier from the Montreal Impact sat down the other day. Had a nice conversation here in the Extra Time Radio studios. You can catch that on iTunes, Buzzsprout, and Stitcher Radio. And make sure you stay tuned to MLSsoccer.com for all the coverage of the preseason as we inch closer to the first game of the season on March 2nd.